Hello and welcome to the Celtic Down Under podcast. I'm your host, Jarrod, and joining me are Sean and John. How are you, Sean?
Good. Enjoying this inclement weather in Perth. It makes me feel like I'm back home in the Scottish summer, having this Perth winter.
How are you, John?
I'm very well. I will do a little bit of the weather forecast. Also, it's freezing here in Sydney. We've just found out we've got another week with a COVID lockdown, which is so much fun. So, bored.
You bouncing off the walls yet or what, John?
Yep, I'm already gone mad.
Perfect. Great time to talk Celtic then. Yeah, so what we'll do is just anyone who tuned in for our live podcast on the weekend just gone, thanks for that. It was great to have people watching and listen to us talking rubbish about potential transfers and Celtic Football Club and everything. So thanks for that. We'll do more of them during the season. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the Celtic Down Under podcast through your favourite podcast app. Also, you can get our podcast on YouTube, so please subscribe to our channel on there. So what we'll do is we'll just get straight into it. We'll start with our first topic. Peter Lawwell has left his role as CEO of Celtic. So, boys, what I want to know from you guys, and I've got we put this out on Twitter as well, so I'm going to read a few posts out in there as well, but I want to know how you guys look back on his time in the position and what his legacy at the club will be. So we'll go to you first, Sean.
Yeah, I think, he's never going to get anywhere near his predecessor in Fergus McCann. Let's be frank about that. And it's a shame. He's definitely overstayed his welcome, and as time went on, he decided on his own to increase his purview more and more every year, to the point where he was sitting on like multiple committees and like 3 or 4 different football boards at the same time. Unbelievable retail contracts. I think somebody said that the only positive that came out of the review that Dermot Desmond commissioned was the retail arm of the club was doing well. Apparently everything else was just a shit show. And that kind of, to me, comes to Lawwell was trying to micromanage everything, and he's fucked up. And he's not brought in people whether he can trust people or not, I don't know. But he's not brought in people who are competent enough to do these roles for him. And so he's just taken it on himself. And whether it's an issue of his competence or whether it's an issue of he spread himself too thin, he went as soon as Brendan Rodgers left. That was it. That was the end of the game. I think he was clashing with Rodgers because, they were literally clashing over decisions and roles and who should be in charge of making football related decisions. Lawwell thought it should be him. Rodgers thought it should be him, and we all know what's happened since then. He brought in his yes man, Neil Lennon, and everything went to shit. And unfortunately for Lawwell and for us, that's probably going to end up being his legacy, is that in his last 2 years, he decided to start running the show when he was not placed to do it or not competent enough to do it. But either way, he proved that he couldn't do it.
All right, so before we get your take on it, John, I'll go through a couple of the Twitter post responses that we had. So we had one here: held Celtic back years and stuck his nose into business he wasn't qualified for. Egomaniac, control freak who was vastly overpaid and stayed for 12 years too long. In contrast to that, we've got another one here. It says, anyone who says anything other than financial success, 9 in a row and 4 trebles in a row, is a half-wit brat who needs slapped. Then you've got another one saying his legacy will be the man who watched the club being cheated for millions for over a decade and not only did nothing, but also helped the perpetrators start a new club while claiming it was the same club. He should have been ousted from the job years ago for dereliction of duty. So here's another one: dictatorship, nepotism, blind eye to cheating, illegal player registrations, EBTs, regression in Europe, toxic relationship with fans, shambolic recruitment and downsizing of Celtic FC. So you've got quite a few people there. You've got disco lights, 3/4 size indoor training building not fit for purpose, 50-year-old stand that's well past its sell-by date. The John McGinn shambles, awful buying, good players sold cheaply. He was awful. So you've got a lot of people there all over the place. So, John, what's your take on him?
Well, not good, to be fair. There's really two types of versions of Peter Lawwell, which we'll probably remember. There's the one here and now, and there's one maybe that history will remember long term. I agree with and I feel the same thing, the anger right now towards what he did, because in the short term, he screwed up too much and too much of a short period of time. I mean, all of the problems that we're discussing probably happened over 3-4 seasons. We saw them coming. We had all the banners up, asleep at the wheel and all that stuff. So we knew it was coming. Although I think history might remember him a bit differently in the sense that, he was the head of a period of huge success at Celtic. And yeah, you're right. Financially, he brought Celtic to a point where we really could have gone on and recompeted against some big European teams, but we didn't. And that's just the fact. We didn't. We went backwards. We regressed, and that's completely because of him. Really, we should never know who the CEO is. Really, he shouldn't really be involved in the day-to-day running of a football club. And the fact that we all know who he is and how much involvement he has and how much we disagree with it is too much for me. It's far too much.
I'm sorry, I'm just going to disagree with you quickly, John, before you move on. He definitely should be involved in the day-to-day running of the club. He should not be involved in the day-to-day running of the football operations.
Yeah, no, exactly, right. And correct me if I'm wrong. What you mean is like the business sense. He has to be involved. The club. Exactly. Yeah. And we've kind of talked about this before, right? With any football team, not just Celtic, but there should be a football team is at the end of the day a piece of entertainment, right? And I understand it's more than that for a lot of people, including most Celtic fans. But but all of the financial success should be translated into the entertainment package of it. The buying and selling of players at a really good quality that gets us trophies and makes us win stuff. That's the only reason why you want to be financially secure. That should be your whole goal. Like I understand, I've said this before. For me personally, I think the role of a business and a CEO, if you were to break even every single season and you were to win everything, I'd be quite happy with that. Obviously, there's some business senses involved where you've got to think a little bit long term and stuff and all that. But really, that would be my absolute ideal situation. Never been financially insecure, but never having 35 million in the bank just for a rainy day. And then it all bloody disappears anyway because of COVID. So I think that's what I'm saying. In my opinion, short term, he'll not be remembered well. Long term, maybe history might remember him slightly better. I don't know.
Yeah, I think what you're saying there is kind of like with Fergus. He wasn't really well liked when he left, but you look back at him now and you just build him a statue. The guy deserves it with what he did for the club. Like Peter Lawwell, I'm not a big fan of him at all, so I'm just playing devil's advocate right here. Not a fan of him. Don't like the guy. I think he got too involved in things he shouldn't have. So, as you were saying, Sean, there's the football side and there's the business side, the PLC side. He should be all over that, running that, and the football either a director of football or your manager running that. That's what we're seeing at the moment with Ange and Dom. So it's good to see that looks like there's a clear, they're working together. That's Ange's area is the football side. Dom's side is the business side and the club and operations and how that's all working. That's what I want to see. Well, I'm saying devil's advocate, there'll be a lot of people looking back going, well, in the last 20 years, we've won 15 titles domestically. So people will be saying that. There's been improvements to the stadium every season. So if you're making a lot of money, there's been investing 3-4 million here and there. New pitch, disco lights, safe standing area, the Celtic way's been done up outside, all this sort of stuff, right? So there's little things that make the fan experience better because you said it's an entertainment industry. You need to invest in your infrastructure. So he's been doing stuff like that bit by bit, season by season. So there'll be people saying all that. I appreciate that that's been done for the fans, but at the end of the day, it's all about what's happening on the pitch. And since the invincible treble and Brendan being the biggest figure at the club, I don't think Lawwell could take that and his ego couldn't take that. And that's when he started interfering more and more and more and more. And the club's gradually downsized bit by bit by bit by bit to get to where we are today. So for me, his legacy is off the field, on the business side and establishing and building up what the club is. Okay, I'll give him a thumbs up for that. The rest of it, 2 thumbs down. Not needed.
The story that always sticks out in my mind is the one where, is it Piccini, the right back, where he got Brendan Rodgers delayed his family holiday so that he could meet Piccini, who was flying in from Valencia, I think, to have he was in Celtic Park and everything. And then apparently once he got here, stated his wage demands while he was in the building, and Lawwell just went, nah. And then apparently he was asking for something like 60 grand. I'm like, do you know what I mean? Like, how do you not communicate that before you get on a plane? Do you know what I mean? That is ridiculously outside of our wage structure, you know? Like, how did that happen? Like, and apparently that was what triggered Rodgers, that whole thing.
What, because a player asked for 60k and Rodgers went, oh, that's achievable?
No, the player was allowed to, like, I don't
even
think Rodgers was involved in that. Like, the player was allowed to, like, Rodgers delayed his family holiday and, you know, went out his way to meet this player, and then Lawwell just hadn't even had a conversation with him about whether they could meet in the middle in advance, you know?
And that's one of the biggest... Sorry. Yeah, I was just going to say that's one of the biggest problems with Lawwell as a CEO is he shouldn't be involved in a structure of recruiting players. That's not a job of a CEO. That would be one of his biggest criticisms long term.
Well, a CEO's job is to sign off the budget. So, I mean, he doesn't. You're right.
And
he shouldn't be negotiating, but he should be saying, "Here's your wage budget," and then if the director of football or manager, and it would be manager's job at the time, wants to go over that budget, then they would have to negotiate with him to justify that in some way, you know?
That's exactly it.
Well, I heard a different version of that story, so that's what I'm saying as well. There's so much misinformation. Like, you're saying it broke down on wages, Sean. I've heard that it broke down over the transfer fee and the structure that, like, he got in there, and then when Lawwell was sitting down, he was like, no, we're not going to pay this much up front, and they wanted, I think it was like 10 million for him or 11 million or something, but it was going to be 7 paid up front. And he's like, no, we'll only pay 5. And so it was turned around and said back to his club. That's what I heard about that transfer. So it could be either.
But the result is the same, right? It's a CEO who is mismanaging the recruiting of players. And look, I can remember sitting in pubs with my old man, and he's telling me that Lawwell should be getting statues outside of Celtic Park for how well he's financially run Celtic. But when, even at the time, even though we were winning everything, we were getting disgruntled by the fact that these stories were coming out. And we were getting quite annoyed. I mean, look, he who should not be named, you know, John McGinn saga and all that stuff. That was just the absolute case study of why Lawwell really fucked all that stuff up for the Celtic recruitment.
What I also heard was, he was saying he built a big, pot of cash in the bank that he wasn't doing anything with. What also hurt was, you're saying with COVID coming along, was I think his legacy that he was trying to build up with that cash was the hotel and the museum that he wanted to build and the new superstore. Because if he managed to get that 35, 40 million he needed to build that would be his Fergus's legacy was that getting us out of debt, keeping us alive as the same club and the Lisbon Lions stand, right? And building that. His legacy, I think he was working towards, was get that museum, get that hotel, because that hotel is going to be a revenue stream ongoing year upon year upon year upon year for the club. Because if I went over from Australia to go to a game, I don't know Glasgow that well. So for me, if there was a hotel right there, I'd be like, happy days, I'll grab a room there. The club's making money off a fan, and then they're getting tickets off me. I'll go spend money at the superstore. I'll go to the museum. So I'd be that Celtic tourist. Then you'd have European nights. Opposition crowd comes over. Where are they going to stay? If it's right near the stadium and there's bars and whatever around there, perfect. They'll go there. You make money off them as well. So I think that's what his legacy was going to be in his mind, that, okay, I've run the club well enough that we built this, which is going to be a good money spinner for the club going forward, and that never happened.
Yep, and that's the problem. Never happened. That's what he fucked up. Yeah, I mean that could still go ahead, right? You could still have the hotel and the megastore and the museum and stuff. It just won't be financially as free, I guess, as spending 30 million, 35 million on doing it all. Probably have to take a loan out, but then that's, if he had done that anyway, if he had taken a loan out for that stuff, all that infrastructure, right, and then reinvested the actual money that he had into the team, he would have made so much money from Champions League.
Exactly.
So it's just a silly way of managing a club. I would look at the biggest teams in the world, right? Real Madrid, Barcelona, all of that stuff. They have all been running at a financial loss. They're all in debt, right? And it's taken something like COVID for that to be a really big problem. But what are the chances of that ever happening? Do you know what I mean? You can't really mitigate for a global pandemic of that scale. So you could have 100% spent all of that money on player acquisition and taken loans out against the infrastructure, and then taken the revenue you would be getting from European football back into paying that debt off. And you'd have paid it off really fast as well if you were really good at it. Yeah, I think short term Law will be despised, as he rightly should be, because it was him and his board, still bloody board we've got, that screwed up the 10, in my opinion. As much as it was obviously the players on the pitch, players that wanted the way should have been allowed to leave. We should have bought just as good straight away. I think long term, not forgiven, but maybe we'll forget a little bit. We'll forget as much of the detail, so it might just be respected rather than loved.
For me, the thing will always be the fact that he's turned our income into just have the retail is just such a huge percentage of our income. It really is like a safety net for us. Because the Champions League is not, it's particularly the way we run, is not something that can be relied on. They used to have every second year as the model, and I think they've changed now to 1 in 4 is your model for Champions League income, which basically means in terms of amortization, you're looking at the budget for 7.5 million a year, or 7.5 to 10 million a year in terms of Champions League, which is why you have 32 million in the bank, because you're spreading that cost over 4 years, which is how they budget. So that's the way they run the squad. That makes sense, and it works, and we stay on an even keel because of that. But it's not what fans want to see. Fans want to see Champions League every second year. We'd rather that they pumped 20 extra million pound into the squad every year. And if you look at that in a numbers on paper kind of standpoint, then that actually results in a loss. So if you make every second year, so you pump an extra 20 million in, and you make it every second year, then your outlay is over 2 years is 80 million, but your income is 60. So you actually lose money doing that.
And you can offset that with the financial mismanagement of the club and the wage bill. We're spending 65% of our net income on player wages at the moment, which is ridiculous. The season when Rodgers was manager first time around, we had 100 million come in. We spent 62 million or something like that, I think it was, on wages. You look at a club like Ajax, who went to the Champions League final a couple of years later, and they were spending 40 million on wages, and they were bringing in 120 million. So it shows we haven't been getting value for money as well. So that's another factor, that we wanted him to stay out of the football side, but then he got involved, and now I think we're paying too much in wages as well. And you got people at the moment talking about the club's downsizing. I actually hope that we're being smarter with our money, but that's another issue for later on.
I mean, and it's I don't think if he spent what do you think Celtic's budget is yearly? 20 million? 15 million?
No. Oh, for what? Do you mean
for player acquisition?
What do you mean? Are you talking about salaries and amortization, or are you talking about transfer money? What?
Transfer fee, not wages, because wages is a separate. I understand it probably comes out from the same pool.
Football clubs aren't really managed in terms of transfer budgets. The way they work out is amortization, which is if you sign a player, you add the cost of his transfer fee plus his salary, total salary. Then you divide it by the number of years that he's contracted, and that's how you budget it. Okay. So if you sign a player for 10 million, who's 2 million a year in terms of salary on a 5-year contract, then his amortization would be 4 million per year.
Yeah, right. Okay. So what do you think that is?
I believe it to be 70. I would say about 70.
70 million a year.
Something like that.
We're spending, on average, we've been spending around 60 to 70% range for the last 5 years.
So if we were to add, if we were to add 10 million of that, right? So let's say everyone was saying if we were to add 10 million, would that guarantee us 1 and 2 Champions League qualifications?
No, nothing. You're never guaranteed, no.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah, you're absolutely not guaranteed. Could we speculate and say that that's a good ratio to move forward to the plan? You spend an extra 10 million a year, and you can speculate and budget from 1 out of every 2 qualifications you're through.
Financially, you call that a high risk strategy. Oh, higher risk. Excuse me.
I call that strategy? I call that Glasgow Rangers strategy that made them go under.
I don't think it's that bad, but I mean, it's definitely higher risk.
Just want to do it for a cheap pop.
Yeah, look, the retail income is a lot more of a. So the fact that the retail income is a very steady income, if you know what I mean. Like there'll be ups and downs every year, but you're talking like 10% fluctuations, right? And whereas the champion, your revenue from competition is, if we don't make the Champions League, is what, 15 million. If we do make it, it's 40 million. So like it's it's huge. That's like 150% variance. Do you know what I mean? Like that is when you start to gamble on getting that money, that is what you call high risk strategy.
Yes, I can totally see that. Yeah, I just think that there are some areas where we could be, and it doesn't have to be in, what did you call it, monetization of players,
amortization.
Okay, we don't have to spend 10 million extra in monetization. We could spend it in better data analytics. We could spend it in better scouting departments. We could spend it in our youth academy, and I feel like that's probably where we've failed over the past, probably since Lawwell got involved, to be honest. And all of that stuff of what we discussed before is we could have a better long-term plan and long-term strategies without having to bank this money every year just for a rainy day fund. To be honest, I don't see that as if I was ever in Lawwell's position, I don't know how I could justify doing that every single year and not reinvesting it into the company that I'm working for.
Do you want to know the dangerous thing of having all that money sitting in the bank? My old man is a bank manager. My godfather is a head of taxation at a big company over here. So one thing they've told me is having a lot of cash sitting in the bank doing nothing is stupid. It's actually the worst thing you can do. Mm-hmm. So as you were saying, when we mentioned the hotel, if we had to put up, say, 10 million into that and then got a loan for the remaining 30 million, by the time we pay off that 30, that we've put 10 million in, so as we're paying that off, we've already got an asset that's going to be incurring and improving and going up in value as we're paying it off, and we're going to be ahead of the curve. It's the same with if you were to do up Barrowfield. That would be an investment. Do new change room, do a new stand, do all that. That's something that if we spend a couple of million on it now, then in 5 years' time, it's going to be an asset, which means our assets on the ledger will go up, which means then we've got more leverage with the banks. We actually are in a better spot than if we had 35 million sitting in the bank, because if we ever had to do anything, you've got these assets that are worth more. That's kind of like when you look at the main stand and how old that is. People are talking about, can we put another tier over it, make it all the same size, bring it up to 80,000. Those extra 20,000 seats there would pay that stand off and the value you need to in 5 to 10 years. And then you just totally bank again after that 5 or 10 years. That's just an extra, if it's 600 quid, right, a season ticket, and you've got an extra 20,000, some extra cash there for you, isn't it?
100%. And look, there's loads of stuff that we need to do. What was that?
It's extra 12 million a season at 600 a pop. So if you did something like that, it'd cost
you fewer tickets, though.
Yeah, I understand that, and I'm just saying, with there being a waiting list and all this sort of stuff, I doubt it would happen if you would sell it all. But that's the sort of thing there that you look at for an investment wise to grow and improve your facilities, your infrastructure, things that you own in asset. But at the same time, yeah.
Which he didn't really do.
It was kind of handy to get the money there, but we didn't do shit.
He did, because a lot of the stuff that he's claiming that he probably did, and Celtic's claiming that he did, was actually not adding on to what we had. It was to bringing stuff up to the modern era. Yeah. That's all he ever did. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that all the renovation outside of Celtic Park, Celtic Way and stuff was all actually on a Commonwealth Games grant. That was so that when Glasgow had the Commonwealth Games, that they could use Celtic Park as some of the arenas. That's how we spent that money and renovated the out the front. He didn't do anything else. All the other stuff, he just brought it back into what modern football should be. So he never really added that stuff on that could appreciate in value.
So to give you sorry, John. Yes, you're right. That was city grants and part of the whole, state aid conspiracy paranoia that I find hilarious. But just to also, before we move on from the kind of the model debate, one that I like to compare is usually to teams like Belgium and Portugal, and Portugal have I just quickly googled it in the background there, and Porto apparently have a salary of 29 million or 30 million pounds a year. So it's about half. Their salary in total is about half of Celtic's. They also found a different list which has their 3 or 4 highest earners higher than any Celtic player. But then there's a precipitous drop off after that. So there's 3 or 4 highest earners, more than any Celtic player earns. And then there's another 3 after that are about Scott Brown, Callum McGregor level. And then it's down to David Turnbull, Greg Taylor levels after that for everyone else.
But what they do there is they bring through youth, don't they?
Well, no, not really. That's the thing. What they do, their model is that they are quite happy and willing to spend 10 to 20 million on a player on the gamble that they will then sell that player on for a profit. And also that they will then, those players will help them get the Champions League. So your Benfica, your Porto, your Sporting, this is the model that they use. It's not that they do bring through their own youth players, but the model is really to supplement their squad. They will spend 8 figures on a player on the assumption that they will sell at least 50% of those players. Like the player trading model should be in profit is what their model is, but it also relies on Champions League income, and that's with a total salary base that's half of ours. So, yeah, wow. But you have to look at last year, Porto made losses of £100 million.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So do we, as Celtic fans, do we want our cake and to eat it? Do you know what I mean? Do we want the world here? I don't know. It's a tough one.
Did Porto make the Champions League semis recently or quarters? Quarters.
Yeah, like they definitely went through far. I remember that.
Yeah, but then the following year they didn't qualify. Do you know what I mean? So that's the kind of that's what I'm talking about. It's your boom and bust. Sorry.
That's the conundrum you're in if you push it the way they do. But yeah, that's good to see the comparison in the wages there. I always thought they'd buy a couple of players, big ones that they'd want to sell on, but then they'd bring through their youth or younger guys that they signed for a low fee, develop them, sell them on and go again. That's how I always thought most of those Portuguese teams worked. So
that's more of a Benfica Sporting thing than Porto, but yeah, they all use that kind of player trading model.
Yep.
I think as far as a model, which Peter Lawwell was very, very slow to even doing. And actually, to be fair, we all thought it was going to happen this season. It still hasn't happened. So I'm still relatively irritated by that. We wanted a much more similar model to like Salzburg, for instance, or maybe Ajax, but I don't know as much about Ajax, where we have that conveyor belt system with players, right? Where we can have a director of football, performance director, whatever the hell we call it, sporting director. And they are very much fixated on making sure that model continues, where we have your first team player, the backup that will eventually be the first team player, and then the youth coming after. And that model just keeps moving, where you buy a player at, say, 10 to 12 million, you sell them for a lot more, but that's the entire squad. Each player, each position has that, structure, and they get sold on, and then the next one is always there. You've already bought them last season or the season before, and it just keeps going.
Yeah, Salzburg do it, so it's like buy someone at 10 million as your starter, buy their backup at 5 million. By the time the starter leaves in 12 months or whatever, they're going for 25, 30. Then the other guy steps up. Now he's valued at about that 10 million, and it's the same starting point again. And then they spend 5 in for his replacement again, and they go again. That's what they do. Ajax does a similar sort of thing, but it's more from within their youth academy because it's so strong.
Yeah.
And they have their director of football there, which is Edwin van der Sar, and he's responsible for overseeing everything.
That's what we need. That's what Lawwell should have done.
Yeah, I think it's particularly with our restraints in terms of work permits, we really do need to be focusing on developing Scottish talent. Or not necessarily Scottish talent, but like homegrown talent.
Yep. Yeah. Well, that will be us for, let's fingers crossed all things go well, but that's at least 5 to 8 years where we're going to struggle with permits and visas and stuff.
All right, guys, let's crack on, get into some other topics because, 30-odd minutes of talk
about Lawwell.
All finances is good chat. So we've got the preseason camp and friendlies. So what are you hoping to see from us achieve from this camp? Are you hoping it's about fitness? Are you about seeing formation that Ange has a team playing? We have our first preseason game today against Sheffield Wednesday. Then we play Charlton on Sunday. I think it's Saturday or Sunday on the 10th. Bristol City on the 14th. Preston North End on the 17th. Then we play Midtjylland. Then West Ham and Midtjylland again. So we've got a busy couple of weeks coming up. So, Sean, what are you hoping out of the camp and the preseason friendlies?
I tell you, last year when we had the preseason games in France, I was so gasping for football that I was like, particularly Celtic, I was all over it. I was like, yes, this is amazing. These games are shit, but I'm enjoying it. I was given proper analysis. I watched 90 minutes of every game. These games against Sheffield Wednesday, Charlton and Preston, I'll maybe watch the highlights or see if I can watch it at 2 times speed or something. I'm not sure. But if I can't, then I'll just drop into 1 or 2 of them. Because at the moment, we've got the Euros going on and I'm pretty spoiled in terms of enjoyable football to watch. What can we get out of it? The squad that we're operating right now is not the squad we're going to be closing the transfer window with, not even close. So,
are you expecting to see many players joining us during the camp?
Yeah, exactly. They're sending down like the 4th choice keeper to join in and stuff. I don't know. Like, it's a concern for me that we're really far behind on our player or in terms of augmenting the squad. And I really don't, apart from the midfield, which is relatively settled, I don't expect too much productivity, to be honest. It's a bit of an awkward one. Build the fitness, and hopefully maybe some of the peripheral players will get a chance to stake a claim. Players like Luca Connell, Lee O'Connor. I hope to get to see these players. Liam Shaw, even though he's just in the door. This is he's got a chance now before any established names come in.
Jonathan Afolabi. No, I'm hoping for the same. Like for me, I want to see the guys build fitness. I'm actually a little excited about it because I want to see how Ange is implementing it. And you never know, like we may see young guy like Monty coming in at left back, doing well and going, okay, we don't need to sign a left back. We've got Taylor. We've got a young guy there who can do the job. Let's focus our resources on a starting right back, a couple of centre backs, a couple of wingers. So it'd be good to see if he can step in. It'd be good to see if Karamoko steps up to the mix and can get into that right wing to back up Jamesy. Then if that's the case, we only need to go and sign a left winger. So Mikey's got some cover. So it's going to be good to see what Ange is seeing and what he's looking at, because he may look at someone and go, yeah, you're a midfielder, but I think you'd be better as a ball-playing centre-half. Or it might be you played as a right back, like Leo Connor can play centre-back, right back, and defensive mid. He may look at him and go, I want to shape you into my Mark Milligan, which was a guy that he had at Melbourne Victory here and then had at the Australian national team, who was that defensive midfielder who screened the back and was a very vital player. You had Milligan and Mile Jedinak playing alongside each other in the defensive midfield spots in that Australian midfield when we won the Asian Cup. He may look at him and go, you can do that role for me. And as an Australian, I'll be like, hey, I know what he's looking to get that guy to do. That's great. But I just want to see what he's seeing and how he's looking at putting things together, because he may see things in training and be like, this player can be this part of the jigsaw puzzle for me. Now I only need to go and recruit 5 or 6 players instead of 10. And I'm hoping that's what happens, so that you can spend a little bit more here and there on those players, on the guys he wants to bring in, instead of having to spend so much of the budget spread out. That's what I'm wanting to see. Brings through some guys what we're talking about, but then recruit others.
Yeah, didn't Rodgers and Neil do what you're kind of talking about? Like where Martin and Neil put Bobby Petta and Petrov in, who were nowhere before that, players like that. Jackie McNamara. And then Rodgers did it with like Callum McGregor and other names escape me, to be honest.
Ronnie did it with Cal.
Yeah, but I don't think I think he was all over the place before Rodgers came in. I don't know. But yeah, I'm sure that's happened with quality managers in the past.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm wanting to say anyway, because that's the 2 managers that you just rattled off there. They've probably been our 2 best managers, in my opinion, that the club's had in terms of win-loss record and what they've brought to the mix since Steen. So if Ange does the same thing as them and we get the results, great, I'll be happy with that. So let's hope he does the same deal and it works.
Yep, I absolutely agree. I think we're more than likely to see Dembele play in a couple of these games, because I hear that Forrest is having to quarantine because he was in close contact with a COVID case. So, yeah, I would like to see him play as many of these games as possible, to be honest. I'd also like to see probably the beginnings of Ange's style of playing. I can't really work out what he will play, to be honest, because from what you've been telling me, what I've been reading, he could be very adaptable. Maybe a 4-3-3 will be where he starts, or the old 4-2-3-1. But I'd like to see some of those players last year that either struggled or were just on the fringes getting pretty regular. I'm thinking Ayeti, I'm thinking Vargas, just to see them settle right down and actually get a good long run of games, basically. Even though these are, games that are just probably more about fitness and getting people up ready for Midtjylland than anything else. You kind of want to either see, you want to balance between getting your first team players fit and also trying to work out whether the reserves or the Colts, what you want to call it, they're ready to kind of step up. And that's what I want to see.
So I'm okay with kind of the idea of signing players that fit into a system, because it makes more sense than the opposite of signing a player that's not going to fit into a system that you're determined to play. But on the flip side, you also do have to have a fluidity and a flexibility to what you're willing to play tactically. And then that doesn't necessarily have to be, it might be down to the personnel available, but it should also be down to the opposition, and also not just opposition, just the general where the game is at the moment in time. Like when Martin O'Neill came in with the 3-5-2, and then after a couple of seasons he changed it to 4-4-2, and you need to. I don't think people generally consider Martin O'Neill a master tactician, but at least he did have that flexibility and fluidity to recognise where the game was, you know.
Yep, totally agree. That's what you want to see from any. That's the ideal situation, right? Is changing formation and based on either the opposition events or the players that you have, and that could be like, you know, one player only plays 25 games a year because we only bring him on because we're changing tactics or changing formation. That's ideally what you want to see. I don't think we have that luxury right now, unfortunately. But
it sounds like last season in a way where the whole plan was we brought in enough guys to play the 3-5-2, and we're going to have Eddie and Griff up front. And then Griff comes back and he's so out of shape that went out the wayside, and then he ended up playing 20-odd games or something last year anyway, and most of them are off the bench. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, last year we wanted to play this formation. We didn't have the players that would fit into it. So we just changed to whatever works. And we were just changing it week to week almost, you know, like, and then everyone was like praising Rangers for for knowing their system, being like having an instinct because they've been playing it so long, they all know their role, blah, blah, blah. But, you know, the reality is if they came up against a good team that knew how to counteract that, they, like in previous years, they didn't have an answer for it. You know, they don't have a flexibility to them. And that's my kind of one reason that the hope that I'm holding out that we can win the league this year is that Jarrod doesn't have that tactical flexibility. He just has a system that is really, really, really well drilled. And he has this last year, at least, had quality players that could play that system. So if we can overcome that system, overcome their quality, then they won't have an answer to that. But that's an if and a maybe.
Yeah. He's hoping.
Yep. So what we'll do is we'll jump onto a couple of transfer rumours, and then because what I was just thinking there is we're talking about if the, say, I was talking about if we could recruit for particular positions, if we can get a few youth guys to come through. So say the link is that Norwich are going to offer 12 million for Aya. If we can get 12 million plus a 20% sell-on or something like that, I'd say bite the hand for it, because what we're seeing linked today is Carl Starfelt, Swedish centre-back who plays at Reuben Kazan, we're being linked with for 4 million. The Aussie Hun Craig Moore is saying that Mario Vuskovic, apparently Celtic's going cold on that, but that was 4.5 million. So if you were to buy both of them, or Ko Utakura from Man City, 4 or 5 million for that centre-back, and then spend 4 million or whatever it is on Nisbet for another striker, there's your all 4 of those players. If you sign 3 of them, they would come straight in and improve our first team. For me, if Aya goes and we can lose 1 starting player but bring in 3 starting level players, that's perfect. That's what we need to be doing. So yeah, there's been a few other things there where apparently Aaron Hickey, Bologna's not looking to sell him, and Celtic has been linked with Kenneth Powell, 24-year-old. He's a left back, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And Barnsley.
Double check that.
Yeah, so we've been linked with a few players there. So what are your take on all those rumours at the moment, Sean?
Yeah, I'd said on Sunday, and still just think the same. We need 2 first-team centre-backs at least, you know. The stats I've read from Boys Analytics has Carl Starfelt down as a ball-playing centre-back, highest pass accuracy in Russia. Every stat you can think of for passing comes out above every centre-back in Scotland. Apparently, he would also come out lowest amount of fouls as well as defensive duel success. So statistically, it reads like they have found this player by looking at analytics from what I'm reading. Like, he sounds like an absolute dream analytically, but he's also not at the Euros, and Philip Helander is. So there's an alarm bell there of some kind, because Helander is shit. And Celtic rejected him based on the recommendation of Miko Lustig Philip Helander I'm talking about, not Starfelt. The interesting thing you're talking about there as well is you're talking about sell Ajer for 12 plus add-ons, 100%. 1 year left in his contract. That's the best we can hope for. Get it. One thing as well, the thing that I was thinking of when you were talking about, that pays for 3 players. That pays for Nisbet, that pays for Starvelt, that pays for another centre back. And that's 100% what we need to be doing. The interesting thing is, like, talking about players like Starfelt, like, maybe 2 years ago, he would have been worth 6-7 million. Don't mean him 2 years ago. I mean the current, based on the market change. COVID may have depressed the price of some players into our budget that would have previously been above it. Players like Moyel Yunusi for 15 million to Southampton, that's never happening in this market, even though the EPL are largely insulated from because of their TV deal, the market overall has depressed in a way that may benefit us. But that being said, the market is still much higher than it was 10 years ago, where someone like Starfield would have been 1.5-2 million. So pros and cons,
Can I just jump in for a second, Sean?
Ahead,
You're talking about the market being depressed. Perfect example. You said about Moyel Yunusi, 16 million to Southampton. Mm-hmm. Perfect example on that is Diego Laxalt was 16 million to AC Milan, and he's just gone to Russia for 3.5 million or 3 million.
There you go. Perfectly illustrates.
Example right there.
Yeah. So that's the post-COVID world, and teams in Italy, basically any team outside the EPL is having to take a haircut on what they've done in previous years, and we need to be conscious of that. We're not up against as many competitors as we have been in the past, and but we do still need to move faster than we have in the past, because in the past we've always waited to the last minute, and I don't like it. Something doesn't work.
Just popped into my head as well, though, as you're saying that, Sean, is that we're talking about these players as well who need to move on, like Ajer, Edouard, Christie, those 3 in particular, right? Now,
and Cham,
yep. Okay. Now, those guys, it's great to want to sell them, but you've got to need to have buyers. And if the market is that depressed because people lost a lot of money last year, are there buyers out there for them? That's the real question. And at what level?
Mm-hmm.
Like a year ago, we could have got 15, 20 million for Ajer. We would have been looking at 30 to 40 for Edouard. We would have been looking at maybe 10 to 15 for Christie. And Cham, we would have got our money back on easy. Now we'll be lucky to get $1 million for Cham. We could lose Christie for nothing. Maybe 12 million for Ajer is pretty much the most we'll get. And Edouard, if we get 20 million, we're doing well. So, yeah. Strange market.
Yeah, it could end up in a situation like where it was like pretty consistently in the 90s where you had to kind of build a team over time. And I don't know if you remember, I think it was maybe 05-06, the last time when Monaco and Porto played in the Champions League final. I think since then, the football transfer market's just been an absolute pile of flaming shit. And
on steroids.
Yeah, basically everyone outside the top dozen teams is just feeding from scraps. It'd be quite interesting actually to see if some teams that are just kind of holding this year, just in a holding pattern from last season, actually make a big jump, like happened in the past, but has not happened in the last dozen years.
I think half of the reason why we might not be seeing a lot of movement so quickly as what we probably expected, because we've got such a big rebuild, is because we are likely waiting for the Ayers, Christies and Edwards to move on and using that money to reinvest, probably because we got hit so bad from COVID. So yeah, I thought last time we were talking about Ajer, 10 million for a transfer fee was just, I'd never thought in a million years we'd get that, to be honest, for a year left in his contract. So 12 million plus add-ons, hell yeah. I'd take that in a heartbeat. And if you can get something, I don't know, relatively similar for Edouard, and I'm hearing about 3 million for Christie to go to Monaco, but probably just wait for 6 months and might not be the end of the world there. But yeah, I'd take 25 million and spread it across all the positions that we are in desperate need of. That's exactly, and all of these players that we're linked with are the exact types of players that we would want to be linked with, right? We're not linked with either complete want-aways or we've had players like Bauer at Celtic before. You just go, what? That's not somebody you want really around Celtic. Is that really the standard? And then you see in this big long list of half truths, maybe it's encouraging. Just need to get them across the line, basically.
What I find funny as well, though, is you look at it and go, it's also bring these guys in and the wages that they're going to be on isn't over the top. Like, if you look at it, Bruni would have been on 25,000, 30,000 a week. But then you've got guys like Alanusi was on loan to us, but we were picking up a good chunk of that, and he's on like 60,000 or something like that down at Southampton. We're paying 40-something thousand a week to Duffy, or 50,000 to him. We're paying 40-something thousand to Laxalt. So you take all that off our wage bill, and then an example is Mario Vuskovic has been linked to us, and the wage that's being spoken about is 13,000, 14,000 a week. So if you can get 3 guys in, paying them around that 13,000, 15,000, that's 3 starting players for about 45,000, or the equivalent of what you were paying Laxalt a week last season.
Exactly. And that's and maybe we want to move closer to that Porto model and buy some massive player for 25 million. Everyone goes off their nut. That's what we want.
The other thing as well is when you're talking about going like, oh yeah, Moritz Bauer shit. Well, you need to. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like, do I hear the back? As a point of reference, I just quickly Googled the back four from the night we beat AC Milan 2-1. Do you remember that?
AC Milan?
When we beat AC Milan 2-1 in 2007?
No, I don't remember that. I'd have been a kid.
Scott McDonald goal?
Scott McDonald goal, yeah. When Dida got killed by a Celtic fan and had to go to the infirmary. Well, anyway, the back four that night was Lee Naylor, Stephen McManus, Gary Caldwell, and John Joel Perrier-Doumbé.
That classic, that legend.
Standing goal, who'd we have?
Artur Boric.
Wow, that says a lot.
So
you know what that sounds like? Put Ralston on one wing.
Yeah.
Put some hack on the left.
Get Calvin Miller back. Put him on the left.
Calvin Miller on the left, and then just put like Owen O'Connell and I don't know, let's just put one decent defender in there. So we'll put Virgil in there, and then we'll have, Fraser Forster behind him. Yep, sounds good to me.
Yeah. Chris Kellan came off the bench at one each. He obviously made the difference.
Yeah. Yeah, no, look, I mean, and it worked for Porto, right? To have that big, maybe it doesn't work if they're in 100 million worth of debt. So, yeah.
No, that's not debt. That's 100 million loss in one season.
A loss. Oh, so they're not actually in that much debt. They've dropped.
They're more debt than that.
Yeah, Christ almighty.
They're functionally bankrupt.
Let's go buy their players.
I was going to say, can we not just go to Porto buy a lot of their players?
The clearance bin. They need any cash. Dude, buy some players from them the same way we got Luke O'Connell from Bolton Wanderers, Pay cents a dollar for him.
The problem with that is if we go to Porto and try and vulture these players, though someday will just... But
yes.
We say 2 million for that guy. An English team will go 2.1 million. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, that is the problem. But Lawwell's not in the door anymore, so maybe that wouldn't be. We'll just go, all right, 2.5. Fuck yous. Try and get him.
In terms of Edward being sold as well, you have to kind of calculate. Okay, next year's automatic Champions League if you win the league. So if somebody offers us 20 million for Edward, right? We see 10 of that because half of it goes to PSG. So if Edward's goals qualify us for the Champions League, that's worth a lot more than
it's worth 30 million at least there. So,
I'm actually coming round to the idea of letting him leave as a free agent next year because he is the best striker in Scotland, and if he gets us that automatic £40 million by winning the league, why would you sell him?
The only argument against that I can at least understand or empathize with is having somebody around that doesn't want to be there.
Yeah, of course.
It's toxic, right? And when it's not just one and it's a couple, it's a handful. I think that might be one of the biggest problems we had last season. Is it's just a sort of toxic environment. So that would be why I would say that's why I could see justification and being like, now we'll sell him for whatever we can. But I agree. I agree financially.
There would need to be a frank conversation where, like, Edward, we understand you're leaving for free next year, and every goal you score for us adds an extra £1,000 a week onto your wage wherever you're going. So score a shit ton of goals for us. Do you know what I mean? Like, it would need to be a kind of very clear understanding that, like, you need to perform for us to maximize your value, kind of thing.
I agree.
Speaking of Edouard, then, he wasn't selected in France's Olympic team. So that's a good thing for us because it's not going to go to the Olympics and then have to come back and quarantine for 10 days. Mm-hmm. So happy days for us, probably not for him. Old mate Bayo was called up to Ivory Coast squad, but looks like he's going to be off on loan again soon anyway to Toulouse. So I don't think that's a big deal for us. So what are your thoughts on that?
The Olympic one's a funny one. We don't normally have players go to the Olympics. I think Ki Sung Young was the last one I can remember. I don't know. I don't think Bayo's going to make it, but now would be the time for him to have a chance, and that he's basically forfeiting that chance by going to the Olympics.
I agree.
The guy that you were talking about, get him on the bench, the big giraffe.
The big giraffe. Yeah, look, I've seen a few goals that he scored for Toulouse, and they looked like good goals, you know, but like a 30-second highlight on Twitter is not telling me much about how Sunday's played over an hour, you know.
Yeah, that and we, you know, it might be more of an issue with players coming in than who we have just now. It's a weird one, right? Having the Olympics back to back from the Euros and stuff. So it might be more of a case if we bring a player in, we might not be able to use them as immediately as we think if they're off to the Olympics. That's the only issue I see.
Mm-hmm.
Unless they're Ange's mates that he's got coming from Japan who are in the Olympic team over there, and we don't need them in straight away, but as long as we got them after the Olympics, then maybe that's something to look at as well. But not fast, all good. Happy days. We'll get on with it. We've got our squad in there. Celtic's back. We're playing tonight. Getting excited. Brilliant.
I'm watching it. I'm staying up just to watch Celtic, to be honest. I want to see the Ange era.
I might watch it.
I'm contemplating it because what are they going to do? Fire me at work? I finish on Friday anyway. Yeah, bitches.
Do you want a quick rundown of the 16 countries at the Olympics? See if it affects us.
Yeah, go on.
Sure.
Japan, South Africa, maybe. Mexico, France, New Zealand, South Korea, Honduras, Romania, Egypt, Spain, Argentina, Australia, Brazil, Germany, Ivory Coast, and Saudi Arabia. So the ones that jump out there are Australia and Japan.
Mm-hmm. Sign people from those two, yeah, that could be an option. But Marco Tilio, get him in. Get that little left winger in. Little nuggety bloke.
So like
honey on steroids.
Yeah. With Moy would most likely be in the Australian national team, right?
Yeah, he's not the Olympics.
Well, you're allowed a certain number. Was it 3 overage players? Something
3
like
overage, yeah. But he's not one of the ones selected.
Is he not? Okay.
So it might not affect us at all, really. We might just be lucky there. Good.
All right, boys. So we'll get into our final thoughts for the podcast. And John, you still had a quiz for us, do you?
I do, a little one.
Okay, cool. So final thoughts, John.
Okay, so I've heard this chatted around other pods and stuff about McGregor not being captain material, and I disagree. I think he is captain material, and I think he will rise to the role. I think he doesn't have as much of a small personality as we might think he does.
Sean?
That's it.
Yeah, my final thought is I'm glad I am not in England. Having done some amateur investigation into different political systems, anarchy would be preferable to the political shitstorm that is going on in England, as well as the science experiment they're about to do on what happens when you, on virus evolution, when you release a virus on a partially vaccinated population.
And my final thought is, on behalf of Australia, we stand with Mary, Crown Princess of Denmark, who was born in Tasmania, Australia, and say, go the Danes, get it up, you England. Come on.
Yeah. I was wondering where we were going to go there with royalty. I was like, what?
I'm actually, as much as I definitely want Denmark to win tonight, but also
I'd love to see who's at Wembley.
I'm going to go up at 3 a.m. for the final, so I'd enjoy that more if Italy were beating England in the final rather than Denmark. It's a high risk strategy. I'm not going to deny it.
No comment.
Yeah, I want to be awake when football goes home.
Yeah, when it leaves. Yeah.
All right, John, over to your little quiz to finish off.
All right, just a quick one, right? So I was doing some research during the week, especially with these transfer rumours, and I thought this was interesting. So since UEFA has been ranking leagues, which 10 leagues have consistently been ranked first to third? So there's 10 of them, and they have either been first, second, or third, and they're the ones that they're the only leagues that have ever been ranked first, second, or third since like the 50s.
What? Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Okay, so there are 10 leagues that have been consistently ranked first to third since UEFA has been ranking leagues in the 50s.
In the 50s. Okay, right. Okay.
Yeah. Which 10 do you think that is? Goes all the way up to, this year.
Okay.
Poland is not one.
I said Holland.
He said Netherlands.
Oh, Holland. Yes, the Holland that Everdee says one.
I'll take the easy one. I'll go with English.
Yes. Both the first division. Bundesliga, yes.
Spain.
La Liga, yep.
Ligue 1.
Ligue 1, yes. Ligue 1 has been one.
Portugal.
Portugal has not been ranked.
What? Huh.
Serie A.
Serie A has been ranked. Yes, Serie A is one.
Well, I guess technically I'm out, but if it's not Portugal, who'd be next?
FIFA or UEFA?
UEFA.
Okay, just checking.
Austria
is not one.
Man, I suck at this game.
Whistle.
You've missed. I think we missed the big one. One of the big five.
Have
France, Germany, Italy, Spain, England. We've done them all.
Okay. I don't know if we said Spain.
Yeah,
right, Spain.
all of those.
Okay. All right. Cool.
And then we've got Holland as well. So we've got 6.
Holland. Yeah. So you're missing 4.
Portugal was said as well, wasn't it?
Yeah. No, Portugal's not one.
Okay, so we've got 6 so far.
Russia is one. Yes. So when it was the Soviet top league, it was called Top League. That was
okay.
it.
I'm gonna go for a weird one here. The former Yugoslav republics, aka the Balkans, because the Yugoslavian league would have been up there, but I don't know how those teams are now.
The Yugoslav was not one, so it was ranked lower than third.
Well, there you
go.
Maybe one closer to home.
Scotland?
The Scottish Football League was ranked third 4 times.
What?
So 2 more.
Greece?
Nah. You want me to just give it to them?
Yeah.
Yep.
So one of them is the Belgian First Division A. That makes sense. They were ranked second. They were ranked third twice, sorry. And the other one is, I'm not going to try and pronounce what the name of the league is, but it's NB1, which is the Hungarian league. Which was ranked.
The Puskas back in the day.
Yeah. That's why I thought Portugal, because of Eusebio. But yeah.
There you go. I thought that was interesting. The Hungarian.
Former manager at South Melbourne. There you go, everyone. There's a good tie-in to finish it off.
Yeah, great. Yeah. I definitely meant that when I was looking through the UEFA rankings.
Yeah, heaps. All right, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. Please make sure you follow Celtic Down Under on Instagram and Twitter at Celtic Down. Facebook, join our group. on there, Celtic Down Under. We've also got our website, www.celticdownunder.com. Thanks for listening in again, everyone. Thanks, John. Thanks, Sean. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.